was a small town in Iowa, a sleepy little hamlet with a population of just over 2,000. The town of Villisca had seen its share of tragedy, but nothing could have prepared it for what happened on the night of the 9th of June, 1912. It was a peaceful evening, with the warm summer air wafting through the streets. Most of the town was in bed, sleeping soundly, unaware of the horror that was to come. But on that fateful night, a dreadful act of violence was to be committed that would leave the town of Villisca in shock. Sometime after midnight, an intruder entered the Moore residence, located on the corner of Jones and Garfield Streets. Inside were the Moore family, Josiah and Sarah, their 4 children, Herman, age 11, Catherine, age 9, Boyd, age 7, and Paul, age 5, as well as 2 other girls, Lena Stillinger, age 8, and Ina Stillinger, age 12, who were staying with the Moore's family for the night. The intruder proceeded to bludgeon the 6 people to death with an axe, leaving their bodies in pools of their blood on their beds. The next morning, the town was thrown into a state of shock and panic. It was clear that the murderer was still at large, and the townsfolk were terrified. Mary Peckham, who was their neighbor, was the first to discover the horror that had unfolded the night before. When she went to check on the Moore family, who hadn't shown up for church, she was greeted with a gruesome sight. On getting to the Moore family home, she found the door locked from the inside. She called on the local marshal, Ed King. Marshal Ed King was the one who entered the house and found the bodies, and the shock of the situation overwhelmed him so much that he was never the same again. Even years later, when he died, it was still fresh on his mind. No one could have predicted the tragedy that had befallen the Moore family, but the sight of their bodies that day haunted Ed King until his dying day. The police were called to the scene and began their investigation, but it seemed that the killer had vanished without a trace. For months, the case went unsolved. The police had few clues and no leads to follow. Villisca was left in a state of fear, with people locking their doors and windows at night. There were whispers of a possible suspect, but no evidence to prove it. For over a century, the Villisca Axe Murders has remained a gruesome enigma. With no definitive evidence, the possible culprits of this grisly crime remain shrouded in mystery. As Sheriff Josiah Wilkerson and his team of investigators threw themselves into the case, working tirelessly to uncover the Villisca Axe Murders, they searched high and low for any clue that could lead them to the perpetrator. Interviews were conducted, evidence was gathered, but still, the axe that was used to brutally murder the Moore family and their two house guests remained at large. Days turned into weeks, and then months. Yet still, no progress was made in the investigation. Wilkerson and his team were growing increasingly desperate, and it seemed that the perpetrator would remain a mystery forever. This was one of the largest and most thorough investigations in the history of Iowa. For months, the public was captivated by the mysterious unsolved crime. The gruesome details of the murder were splashed across the news and tabloids, and every clue and lead seemed to point to a different suspect. As the police investigated each one, they were met with dead ends and more questions than answers. The public was left in suspense, anxiously waiting to see if the detectives could finally crack the case and bring justice to the victim. Tension mounted as the investigation went on, and the public held its breath as the police searched for the killer. As the months went by, it seemed as though the crime would never be solved. The police were desperate to apprehend the killer responsible for the terrible crime. They put out a call for help to the public, offering a reward for any information that could bring them closer to the truth. To gain further insight into the case, they consulted with experts in criminal psychology and re-examined the physical evidence from the crime scene. Every clue was carefully examined in a desperate search for answers. The case is shrouded in mystery, leaving the public captivated by its chilling details and the unanswered questions that remain. For years, detectives have searched for clues and tried to uncover the truth, but the perpetrator behind this heinous crime remains elusive as ever. The victim's family has never found closure, and justice still remains unserved, even till this day. Even after all of this time, the identity of the killer remains a mystery. The evidence is long forgotten, and the case remains unsolved. It is a stark reminder of the darkness that lies in the depths of our society, and the mysteries that, even after all this time, remained unsolved. Among the most notorious of these suspects were the traveling minister, Reverend George Kelly, who was seen near the Moore house on the night of the murders, and whose alibi was considered weak. Henry Lee Moore, the uncle of Josiah Moore, the father of the murdered family, who had a history of mental instability and had been in a dispute with Josiah over a property. Andy Sawyer, a local man with a history of mental instability, who often carried an axe around. William Mansfield, a local businessman with a grudge against Josiah Moore. And William Blackie Harrison, a local man with a history of violence, and had threatened to kill the Moore family. Each of these suspects were questioned and arrested in connection with the murders, but eventually released for lack of evidence. To this day, the Villisca Axe murder case remains unsolved, and the identities of the killers remain shrouded in mystery. Numerous theories have been proposed to explain the horrific crime, but none have been proven conclusively. From the insider theory, which suggests that the culprit was someone close to the Moore family, to the stranger theory, which implies a robber-turned-killer, to the serial killer theory, which claims the murders were committed by a serial killer. The possibilities are endless. Could the murders have been motivated by a financial gain, such as an insurance policy? Or could it have been a copycat of another unsolved axe murder that also occurred in 1912? No one can say for sure what happened on that fateful night in June 1912, and the case may remain unsolved forever. However, the mystery of the Villisca Axe murders continues to captivate the public to this day, and it remains one of the most famous unsolved murder cases in American history. To this day, the town of Villisca is haunted by the memories of that tragic night. Every year, the town holds a memorial service for the victims, and a plaque stands in the town square to commemorate the tragedy that occurred on that fateful day. The Villisca Axe murders are a stark reminder of the brutality and senselessness of violence. It is a tragedy that no one in the town of Villisca will ever forget. For over a century, the house has been a source of mystery and fascination. Visitors from near and far flock to the house to experience its chilling history. As you step through the door, you can almost hear the cries of the victims still ringing through the halls. The tour guide will take you through the house, pointing out the original furnishings and eerie details that still remain in the house. You will be mesmerized by the chilling stories of the horrific events that took place in the house, as well as the numerous sightings of the ghosts that still haunt the property, even till this day.